The misfortune of having to be someone other than ourselves. Say if you work in a bank, then the instant you step out of your house, you are considered a banker by society. If you work as a model, each time you look at yourself in the mirror, you see a model. Our language evolved so that when we are trying to explain our job, we may say, I'm a librarian, or a psychologist, or even a doctor. The sentences we frame trying to explain our profession circles around the concept of attaching words that defines us. This is my job. This is who I am. The saying that our brain believes what we feed it is not entirely true. A man by the name of George Stratton did an experiment where participants wore an inverted goggles that flipped the visual scene upside down. At first, everything looked weird. Walking, reaching, and interacting became extremely confusing. After hours or days of wearing the goggles continuously, they began to adapt. The brain started to interpret the world in a normal fashion. After removing the goggles, however, the brain interpreted the real world as an inverted one. And only after a few days, everything came back to normal. The brain can rewire how it interprets sensory input to make sense of altered information. This does not necessarily mean that the brain believes what is fed, but it constructs the most useful interpretation of the information it receives. Thus, simply saying that we become who we are by feeding the brain information about what we do and who we think we are is not entirely correct. But why does it feel that way? Why is it that through time we sense the change? It's because of how the brain works. To put it in simple terms, the human identity is not defined by simple sensory data or by simple statements like I am confident or I am weak, but rather identity is shaped by accumulated evidence like past experiences, bodily states, success or failure outcomes, and reactions from others. As Sartre puts it, we exist for ourselves as self-making or self-defining beings, and we are always in the process of making or defining ourselves through the situated choices we make as our lives unfold. Man exists, turns up, appears on the scene, and only afterwards defines himself. On the other hand, Heidegger devotes much of the second half of Being and Time to an analysis of authenticity, employing the German term Eigentlichkeit, which means being owns own. But he sets up his analysis of authenticity by first claiming that self-deception or inauthenticity is unavoidable. It is a structure of the human condition, one that he refers to as falling. What this means is that in our everyday lives, we invariably conform to the norms and values of the public world. This results in a kind of complacency and indifference about the question of existence. We are not our own selves, where everyone is the other and no one is himself. Rather than living our own lives, we tend to get pulled along by the crowd, doing what they do. As Heidegger writes, we take pleasure and enjoy ourselves, as they take pleasure. We read, see, and judge about literature and art as they see and judge. We find shocking what they find shocking. This prescribes the kind of being of everydayness. Living this way can be comforting, creating the illusion that we are living well because we are doing what everyone else does. But it has its own consequences, as seen in The Double by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Mr. Golyatkin, the protagonist of the novel, is a normal clerk that works in a bureaucratic office. He's immensely and deeply concerned with social status and climbing up the hierarchy. However, his social skills are not suited for his ambitions, which are fragilely built on societal expectations and norms. He is constantly paranoid with what people think of him. And in each conversation, he tries to extract words and unfounded intentions to belittle and attack him. After meeting his doppelganger, a more confident, competent, and by all means better version than himself, he undergoes psychological collapse. Not only does he resent himself for being weak, incompetent, and meek for that regard, but he also feels deep resentment towards the better version of himself. Rather, he feels this hatred for what he could have been, but unknowingly did not have the potential to be so. Well, why does this happen? It is mentally stable and energy sufficient to adapt a certain identity. Identity is metabolically economical. For that matter, it feels safe to be like everyone else and not having to go through the trouble of being yourself, of being someone who is other than what you think you are. In a hierarchical society, survival isn't only a matter of gathering resources or finding a mate to produce offspring so Mother Nature can be pleased. It is essential to play the role foisted upon us by the laws of the universe. What distinguishes us as humans is that we have the capacity to rise above or transcend these facts as the way we relate to, interpret, and make sense of them. If I am compelled by a strong desire for sex, alcohol, or cigarettes, for instance, I do not out of necessity have to act on these desires. I have the freedom to question them and give them meaning, and the meaning I attribute to them shape my choices and the direction my life will take going forward. Well, why go beyond ourselves? As Carl Jung puts it in 2 essays on analytical psychology, it is a frightening thought that man also has a shadow side to him, consisting not just of little weaknesses and foibles, but of a positively demonic dynamism. Indeed, it is frightening. Why would anyone go to an end of a journey where it is not guaranteed to finish? It is also equally frightening not to commence. Perhaps an earthquake is good news for you. It might trigger the layers of earth underneath you to shift, and oil might be suddenly abundant. Be aware of the Americans, though.